Will was a magicless loser born into a world where magic was everything, and people without magical talents were treated worse than slaves. He was always lonely and awkward but still had a childhood friend who he loved. However, she moved on because he didn't have any magical talent. Despite this, he still enrolls in a prestigious university with the goal of getting his crush back, but gets bullied there as well. Thankfully, he is saved when the headmaster shows him that he is a natural warrior with a sword in his hand. After this revelation, he starts honing his skills to become the strongest in the world. He heads off to a high-level dungeon where he engages with giant beasts that shoot magic spells at him. He dodges them and uses his incredible speed and prowess with his sword to utterly style on the monster, slicing it in half with a single slash. The next morning, he goes to the classroom extremely tired, where the professor named Edward teaches them about the basics of alchemy and how to produce sulfur, which helps in the creation of explosives. Edward notices Will dozing off in the back, so he calls his name. Unaware, Will keeps snoring until Edward shouts his name, which surprises Will as he stands up immediately. Edward calls him out to the front and asks him to demonstrate what they were just talking about. Without any other choice, Will is forced to go in front of the entire class to demonstrate the process. Edward tells him that it's super easy and all he has to do is produce some flames and sulfur will be created. Will shakily takes out the wand from his bag and chants the spell to bring forth flames, but to his dismay, not even a small spark emerges from the wand. All the students start laughing at him as if he were a stand-up comedian, but the teacher tells them to shut up. Edward looks at Will with disgust as he claims that he has no idea how someone like Will can be so good at theory but utterly fail at any kind of practical magic and wonders how Will even got selected for this academy. Suddenly a red-haired boy named Cyan takes out his wand and confidently points it towards the items on the desk, using his flame magic to completely burn them and create sulfur, while Will cowers behind the flames. Edward tells them not to do anything without permission and immediately creates a huge crystal of sulfur with his magic spell.
Oh my God!
He tells them that magic is the most important thing in this world, as mages are heroes, and to survive at this academy, the students need to be good at magic. He concludes that fools who have no idea how to control magic should simply leave the academy. After the class was over, Cyan and his cronies walked over to Will and embarrassed him by saying that he could only kill low-level dungeon monsters. However, a classmate and childhood friend of Will's named Cole walked out and told Cyan to leave him alone, asserting that he was much nicer than Cyan and his group. Cyan got a bit flustered but laughed it off, claiming that kindness and hard work wouldn't get you very far without magic before walking away with his goons. Cole and Will started walking, while she told him not to worry too much. Will seemed pretty used to this bullying as he looked towards the sky, claiming that it looked beautiful. It turned out that several years ago, humans were trapped under a layer of darkness and never saw the sky because they lived in fear of some evil spirits who cast a shadow over the entire world. Thankfully, 5 legendary mages stood up to the evil spirits, and after a huge battle, they managed to push them back and freed the humans from the darkness, showing them what the real sky looked like. These mages were known as Maja Vanders, and that title now passes down to the most powerful mages in the world. She remembered the promise Will made to one of his childhood friends named Elfie, who used to show him storybooks of Maja Vanders. They made a pact with each other that they would become Maja Vanders one day. Elfie ended up keeping her end of the deal, as she had incredible talent and rose up the ranks quickly to become the youngest Maja Vander in history, starting to live in the Divine Tower. Meanwhile, Will turned out to be far below average, barely holding on to the dream and the promise. Later that day, he went to meet Professor W, who ended up screaming at him upon learning that this Harry Potter knockoff went to level 7 dungeons all alone. W told him that one day he would get killed. Will fell to the ground and apologized, but asked whether he would get the credit for it or not. W sighed and awarded him 2 credits for his troubles. While Will was busy celebrating, W asked him whether he had still not given up on the dream to become a Vander. He claimed that to even have a small chance of becoming a Vander, Will needed to get admitted to the Upper Institute. To do that, he needed a lot of credits in writing, spell work, and fighting. If he was not able to use any spells, he would never get any credits for spell work, so no matter how many credits he got in the other 2, he would never qualify. Will claimed that no matter what, he was going to try. W told him that first, he would have to graduate, but as far as he knew, he needed 4 more credits by the end of the week. This shocked Will, who immediately started searching for monsters that could give him 4 credits. W told him that there was a monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor which hadn't been defeated yet. Will immediately hugged his teacher. Unbeknownst to them, Cyan overheard this and decided to head out to the dungeons himself to kill the monster before Will so he would get kicked out of the academy for not having enough credits. Later that evening, Will entered the cave alongside his familiar, Kiki, and told her to use her nose to find the monster. However, Kiki didn't seem too keen on it as last time when Will fought a Baskerville, she ended up getting burnt by its breath. On the other side, Cyan and his cronies also entered the 6th floor, determined to find the beast before Will so he would get kicked out. One of his underlings with pink hair asked whether it was a good idea for just 3 mages to enter the 6th floor, but Cyan looked at him angrily, claiming that he was one of the best mages in the class and could deal with it. He thought angry, racist thoughts while walking and told his underlings to use their scan magic to find the location of the beast. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared and punched the spiky-haired boy so hard that he became a pancake on the wall. Cyan was beyond shocked, unable to move, while the pink-haired underling started screaming in terror. Will overheard the scream and immediately got up before running with the speed of lightning towards the noise, worried that someone was getting hurt. He turned around a corner and spotted Cyan on the floor, shooting fire blasts at the monster, who didn't seem bothered by it at all. Will immediately recognized the monster as the Sentinel, an extremely strong monster worth 10 credit scores, but wondered what it was doing on this level of the dungeon. He realized that Cyan's magic was nothing to the monster, as it completely ignored the flame blasts and kept moving towards the terrified boy on the floor. He thought about helping him, but suddenly remembered all the times this person ridiculed him for no reason. This made him want to shut his eyes and pretend he never saw it, but he suddenly remembered Elfie, who told him that he was the kindest person she knew and gifted him a pair of glasses. This reminded him of who he truly was. He put on the glasses just as the monster raised its weapon to finish off Cyan. Will blocked the monster's attack just in time and forced it away to save Cyan's life. Back at the academy, Edward entered W's room and told him to immediately send his familiar into the dungeons, as Cyan and his lackeys went inside to the 6th floor without permission. W realized what had happened but told Edward not to worry as Will was also on the same floor. Back in the dungeon, Will clashed with the monster again and again, blocking its attacks and outmaneuvering it before dealing a swift slash to its arm, slicing a finger off. The monster angrily tried to attack, but Will dodged, moving through the air like an eagle. The monster finally caught Will, but Will managed to block the blow with his sword. He got blasted back, after which the monster threw rocks at him, which he slashed through effortlessly. He jumped around the monster and managed to land on its back before stabbing it right through the neck. The monster started flailing while Cyan was beyond shocked to see Will's capabilities. Back at the academy, Edward was also shocked to see this while W claimed that Will was an outcast as he had no magic but superhuman strength. For a mage, he was as hardy as a dwarf, and his brain was so capable that he learned all the attack patterns of any race just by having one look at them. They watched as Will managed to slash off the monster's arm and then calmly walked towards the giant sword on the ground. Will picked up the giant sword effortlessly. W told Edward that in a world filled with magic and wizards, Will was the only warrior. The monster shot an energy beam out of its mouth, but Will managed to block it with the giant sword and slashed at the monster, slicing it into little pieces. The monster fell to the ground, unmoving. Will then walked over and extended a helping hand to Cyan, who looked still shocked. Edward couldn't believe his eyes and screamed at W that a person without magic could never surpass a magician before storming off. W realized that Edward was in denial, but he knew that the story of Will was going to become legend, as he turned the world upside down by making Wistoria the only place in the world where a wand and a sword meet. That night, Will remembered how when he joined the academy, everyone laughed at him for not having any trace of magic. People always bullied him and called him a loser, claiming that he only got into the academy because he was friends with Elfie, the Mage Vander. Those comments hurt him terribly, and he fell into depression. One day, the principal of the school called in Will alongside W to have a meeting. She looked at the boy with no magic talent herself and wondered how he got into such a prestigious academy, but unlike others, she decided to test him out. She used her flotation magic to throw a dagger towards Will, who grabs it as if he was meant to hold it since birth. W looked a little confused, but the old lady was confident in what she was doing. She immediately covered Will with magical circles, ready to blast fireballs at him, which scares Walk as he thought this might be the end of the boy. But Will didn't skip a beat and immediately slashed all the magic circles around him in a single elegant slash before dropping back on his feet. Walk falls over in shock, while the old lady laughs, claiming that this boy was meant to hold a sword and not a wand. She tells them that she is going to let Will continue studying at this academy, while W will be his guardian since Will doesn't have any parents. W asks her whether it would be safe for a boy with no magic to study at a university filled with mages, but the old lady confidently tells him that Will can manage. Tears start flowing down Will's face as he looks up at the lady and simply asks whether he can ever become strong enough without magic to become a Majavander and climb the tower to reunite with Elfie, which brings a smile to the old lady's face. She tells him that if he has unwavering determination to climb to that level and a strong will to fight, there is still a chance for him to make that climb. This fills Will with a new fire and determination to become the strongest in this world. The next morning, he wakes up a little groggy but heads down to his class, where Wok explains the workings of the academy. He tells them that to become a Majavander, they all first have to qualify to study at the Upper Institute, which opens a path for them to become the strongest mages and rule from the top. To reach the Upper Institute, however, they need to either create a new magic spell or they need at least 7,200 credits in this academy, which is extremely difficult. He tells everyone that they shouldn't even dream of reaching the Upper Institute since none of them are even getting enough credits to graduate. That day, Wok drilled them with supplementary lessons, after which Will was completely spent. He meets up with Call, who asks whether Wok's class was very difficult. Will sighs and claims that he made them repeat several lessons and gave them a bunch of homework, but it was all because they didn't have enough credits. Call claims that she likes Wok as at least he tries to help the students, whereas Ed would have simply left them to fail. Will laughs, and they reach a corner when they suddenly hear a ruckus and peek around to find Cyan and his underlings surrounded by a bunch of students. They tell everyone that Cyan defeated the sentinel monster worth 10 credits all alone. All the students seem shocked and praise Cyan for his strength, but he seems pretty stressed about it all, as he is the only one who knows the truth about the situation and how Will is the one who defeated the monster while Cyan was lying on the floor like a helpless baby. Suddenly, he spots Will walking past alongside Call, and this immediately fills him with rage. He shoves everyone out of the way before grabbing Will by the collar and saying that what happened that day can't be true as Will is completely talentless. Call immediately comes to his defense and tells Cyan to let him go. The brat clenches his teeth and takes his hands off of Will before walking away in anger, followed by his cronies. Call asks whether anything happened between them, but Will lies that nothing happened. Meanwhile, Ed goes into the Grandmaster's office and tells her that Will should be immediately kicked out of the school. The Grandmaster looks completely relaxed as she asks why he thinks that way, but Ed replies that Will is a warrior with no magic abilities and yet is trying to become better than people with magic. He claims that a magic academy is no place for a warrior. But the Grandmaster smiles and claims that kicking Will out in his 6th and final year would be very cruel. She takes out a register filled with information about the students and opens Will's page before noting that he has good marks in writing and has been gaining credits consistently even without having magic. She claims that this makes him an incredible student, as not only is he keeping up with others, but he is outperforming them even after being at a major disadvantage. She tells him that even if he can't become a Majavander, he can easily become a scholar or a healer and help others. Ed claims that if he wanted that, then he would have had no problem with Will, but Will wants to become a Majavander. The Grandmaster thinks for a moment and claims that it can definitely be a problem and tells Ed to design a test for him. She tells him that he knows Will's secret now as well, so she will give him complete control over the place and way he takes his test. If he makes his way through Ed's test, he will stay at this academy, but if he can't, then Ed can expel him if he wants. Ed tells her that he is not as lenient as her before walking off with a smile on his face. On the other hand, Will is completely unaware of this plan and keeps going on with his day. Call helps him open his locker as it can only be opened and locked with magic, which he doesn't have. Call spots his sword inside the locker, as he can't carry it in school, and feels bad for him, but soon they both enter the library. He immediately starts revising the history of magic and also about the other races. Call tells him that he is already the best at writing and shouldn't stress too much, but Will knows that even if he loses a single credit, he will have no chance of qualifying for the Upper Institute. Moreover, he likes reading the story about the war between the dwarves and the humans, as even though the mages were superior both in number and in skills, the warrior dwarves still stood their ground and fought to the bitter end. Before they can talk more, Ed appears behind them like Snape and tells Will to immediately meet up with him in the exam hall, alone. Will follows him without a word, and when they reach the spell hall, Ed tells him that he is going to take a test. If Will manages to strike even a single blow on Ed, he will receive 5 credits for spell work. But if he fails, he will be expelled from the academy, as people who can't use magic shouldn't even look at Majavanders, let alone try to become one. Will is still shocked, but Ed doesn't wait a single second and conjures all his mana before creating a magic circle right beneath a shocked Will. Back inside the academy, the headmaster calls Walk in and informs him about what is happening. She creates a TV for him, where he is shocked to see Will facing off against Ed. Will dodges the magic circles beneath him, which explode, but Ed pursues and keeps shooting exploding magic while Will barely manages to escape, constantly running away from the mage. Walk tries to speak against it, claiming that it's too cruel and one-sided since Ed is one of the strongest mages in the kingdom and very close to becoming a Majavander himself. Ed uses another dark explosion, which Will barely dodges as he breathes hard from all the running but realizes that he can't stay still. He starts running with all his might once again and circles around Ed before trying to land a spinning kick, but unfortunately, it gets completely blocked by Ed with his magic shield as he blasts him away. He spits blood from his mouth as he sees Ed through his blurry vision, realizing that he is completely outmatched as both Ed's defense and offense are completely without any holes and there is no way he can even scratch him. He tries to get up once again while Ed gets ready to finish the battle and overlaps the same spell multiple times to create a wall of explosions that Will didn't even know was possible. He starts running away, but the explosions blast him away once again, as Ed keeps blasting him up in the air like a ping pong from one end to the other, damaging Will's body to the point where he falls to the ground almost unconscious. He tries to get up, cursing his weak magicless body as he wishes he had his sword right now to defend himself. Meanwhile, Call walks back to her locker in order to leave for the day. While she wonders what kind of lessons Ed is giving, she suddenly imagines Will getting tortured by Ed with whips when a gate opens, scaring her. But it turns out to be Kiki, who seems hurt and is bleeding. She walks up to Will's locker and starts scratching at it, and Call immediately realizes that there is something wrong. Back in the exam hall, Will is down on the floor while Ed walks up to him and puts his foot on Will's head, telling him to accept defeat. But Will pushes his foot away and tells him that he will never do that. He gets up once again and tells Ed that he will reach the pinnacle of magic with a sword in his hand because he wants to fulfill his promise to the person he loves. This enrages Ed even more as he gets ready to finish the battle, but just then, Call enters the hall and throws a sword towards Will. He immediately grabs it and then puts on his special glasses, ready for a fight. Ed lashes out at him with his magic, but Will effortlessly slices through it, shocking the mage. This makes him burst with anger as he prepares to fire a barrage of explosions at Will, who gets scared by his teacher's look. Ed immediately starts blasting, but Will shows his insane speed and dodges the attack. Remembering the Dwarf King who lost everyone in the battle and still kept going forward and landed a hit against the Majavander, he decides that he will do the same. He jumps up in the air, dodging all the attacks, and explodes towards Ed, breaking his barrier with his sword. As they both stop at each other's throats, Will breathes hard with a wand in his face, while Ed is completely shocked as a small cut appears on his face. Angry at his own failure, Ed walks away, telling Will that he gained 5 credits. Will falls onto the ground as Call picks him up, while he wonders how many more mages he will have to defeat to become the strongest. Will dreams about the day Elfie told him he was the kindest and bravest person she knew before giving him the special glasses as her parting gift. It was the day she had to go to the tower forever because she was a Majavander already. As she walked away slowly, Will cried out Ali's name, telling her that he would definitely make it to the tower even if the entire world tried tearing them apart. He promised her that he would come to her and then they would see the sunset together, just like they promised each other in childhood. Tears flooded Ali's eyes as she heard this, and she turned around, wiping her tears, and telling Will that she'll be waiting for him. Soon after that, Elfie climbed up the stairs of the tower, and Will was left alone and heartbroken. Professor Nur tried comforting him, but it had the opposite effect and Will started crying. However, he promised his professor that this was the last time he was being a pathetic crybaby. Back to the present, Will is working early in the morning, delivering newspapers to the houses in the city. Just as he is done with the work on the street, an old and bulky man named Don greets him and tells him to do his best. Will then hastily climbs a flight of stairs and trips, sending all the newspapers in his bag flying. However, with his lightning-fast reflexes and nimble arms, he grabs all the newspapers in an instant. Unfortunately, one newspaper escapes his grasp, and as Will picks it up, he finds a news article about Elfie, who has just created another type of magic. She has earned the achievement of being the first mage in history to create 12 types of magic. Will is once again full of determination to work hard so that he can stand by her side. When he reads the article further, he finds that the Upper Institute has issued an order to the Academy students, and the client of the order is none other than Ali. Will freaks out on learning this and immediately runs to his dorm, where he asks his roommate Rosie to make a magic device for him. Rosie asks him why he is so excited, and Will tells him about the order Ali has issued, so he is going to take part in it. He begins changing into his uniform as he tells Rosie that the order is to procure the cores of monsters called frost walkers that are found on the 4th floor of the dungeon. Apparently, Elfie needs them as catalysts, and every student who helps in procuring the cores will be rewarded. That is why Will wants Rosie to prepare a magic item that can help him clear the 4th floor. Seeing him so excited and straightforward, Rosie starts laughing. He was already working on the magic item that Will uses from time to time and hands it to him. Will thanks him and begins heading away but stops him and stuffs bread into his mouth as he asks him to take care of himself. Will soon reaches the 4th floor of the dungeon, but it is already too crowded with dozens of students hunting down the frost walkers for their cores. Just as Will is about to join in the action, a huge explosion rattles him. It was because of Cian's attack that obliterated a bunch of frost walkers in one go, and while his lackeys suck up to him, Cian is not satisfied. He thinks about the fight between Will and the giant monster that fuels his rage and motivates him to become stronger. Unaware of this, Will really believes that Cian is cool. He thinks that there isn't anything left for him to hunt here, so he heads deeper inside the 4th floor but comes face to face with giant penguin monsters. The monsters are hostile, so Will immediately draws his sword, wears his special glasses, and then lunges at them. With a few clean strikes, he manages to slash the penguin monsters with ease, saving the nerdy girl who was about to be killed by the monsters. The girl is dumbfounded at what she just saw. Will defeated the monsters using a sword and not magic, and that is beyond comprehension for her. Will approaches her, and the girl thanks him for saving her life before introducing herself as Iris, a 4th-year student at the academy. At the same time, Wok is giving a lecture about the greatness of creating new types of spells, which alone is enough to make the mage who created the magic climb up the tower. He says that the new magic forms are named after their creators, and if anyone in the class ever creates new magic, they will etch their name in history. The students begin gossiping about how this approach is not practical because only the top 0.1% can manage to do that. Just then, a student named Rose asks Wok if Elfie, who has created 12 new forms of magic, is really good, and he says that she is good beyond belief. He calls Ali one of the greatest mages in the entire history of their world, and Call remarks that the childhood friend Will is chasing after is really special. Her friend Rose teases her, asking if she is jealous that Elfie will steal her crush, Will, away from her. Cole freaks out on hearing that and gets scolded by Wok. Back in the dungeon, Will is walking with Iris, who has heard about the talentless book learner of the 6th year. Will is hurt, but he asks her if she doesn't feel any disdain towards a loser like him. Iris curiously asks how she can look down upon her savior. She says that even if Will doesn't have magic, she respects him for his special talents. He gets flustered and changes the topic to the order issued by Elfie. Iris affirms, saying that she wants to help the Maya Vander who hold up the sky. Her words force Will to think about how no one in this world has seen the true sky. The enormous magic power of the 5 Maya Vander cloaks their world, hiding it from invaders. What they see is the false sky, which is a great barrier that keeps their world safe. According to the lore, when the fake sky falls, darkness will shroud the world again, and chaos will follow. That is why the students who are out here meeting orders are not doing this just to get into the good graces of the Maya Vander, but because they also want to support the sky from falling. He is snapped from his thoughts as Iris tells him that she has met Elfie before. She recites the story of how she was in trouble in the dungeon one day as all kinds of nefarious monsters surrounded her. She was just waiting for her death when suddenly all the monsters were frozen. Iris turned around to see Elfie gleaming in the sunlight, looking like a goddess. Elfie helped her up gently, and ever since then, Iris stands her. While Iris is busy monologuing, Kiki gains Will's attention and leads him to a patch on the ground that has something curious. Iris asks him what he is doing, and Will shows her an ice fragment that the frost walkers leave behind as they move. The fragment here is really big, and now Will is certain that a rather powerful frost walker is ahead. He begins walking towards the cave in front of them, and Iris asks him how he can be so sure because she couldn't find any trace of the frost walkers using her search magic. Will tells her that magic is great, but it is not absolute, especially in the dungeon. He tells the girl that on top of this belief, he also has some knowledge and experience. She doesn't understand the significance of those things, but Will is completely alert because he knows what will happen next. A giant frost walker had been hiding on the ceiling, and it pounces at the unguarded Iris. However, Will had anticipated that, so he moves quickly, taking the girl to safety as the monster hits the ground. He jumps away to safety, and Iris recognizes the giant ice monster with dozens of eyes as a Frost Rex, which is the highest evolved form of a Frost Walker. The monster roars loudly, and Iris recalls that the Frost Rex is a monster worth 6 credits, which makes it really dangerous. In the meantime, the monster charges an ice beam and fires it ahead, but Will jumps out of the line of fire that is soon covered with sharp ice spikes. Will leaves Iris in a safe spot as he heads to fight the monster, but she stops him, telling him that physical attacks won't work on a Frost Rex, whose power is so strong that it can even freeze the sturdy dwarves with just one touch. However, as Will puts on the magic tool made by Rosie, he tells Iris not to worry because he has defeated the monster numerous times already. He charges towards the Frost Rex, avoiding its ice beam by jumping up. Will lands on the ground behind the Frost Rex and speeds towards it, sliding underneath it. The monster, unable to find Will, begins shooting the ice beam indiscriminately, forcing Iris and Kiki to run away. Will then encircles the monster while it is distracted, looking at the roof, and throws the magic tool over it, which gets attached to the monster's side through a hook. After that, Will slides under the monster, tightening a strong rope around it that cracks its skin. He keeps coiling the rope around the monster repeatedly, completely restraining it. The furious monster keeps on attacking recklessly, and once Will has succeeded in laying out the framework for his final attack, he stands in front of the monster. It uses a cold breath that begins freezing Will's skin, but he knows that his work is almost done. The Frost Rex is weak to fire and explosions, and that is exactly what he is going to use. He creates friction on the magic tool in his hand, sending a swift flame that travels down the rope and ultimately reaches the magic tool, which is a very powerful bomb. The magic tool explodes, shattering the giant monster into bits. As the smoke and steam settle, Will recoils the magic tool Rosie has made for him and then goes to collect the ice core of the fallen monster. Iris had been watching all this, and on seeing Will defeat the giant monster without magic, her expressions suddenly change. It turns out she was not the naive girl she was pretending to be, but an agent of someone higher up the food chain. She has discovered that the talentless Will is stronger than what she had heard and wonders how to report this to her superiors. However, as Will tells her that they should head back now, she resumes her act and goes with him. Later, Iris reaches the White Tower and goes to the room on the top, where 4 of the 5 Maja Vanders are seated on their thrones. They are looking for skilled people who can help their world prepare for the day the sky falls, and Iris works for them. She reports that she saw great talent in the magicless boy called Will and recommends him to be let into the tower. 2 of the Maja Vanders are strictly opposed to this, but the white-haired guy named Zoe is interested, and Elfie just smiles to herself. Zoe is willing to let anyone who is skilled stand by his side, even if it is a dwarf, but the elf girl Elle is not happy to hear that because elves believe dwarves are barbarians. The redhead carrot stops them from fighting and says that they don't have to make any decision now because they can wait to see Will's performance in the grand festival that is going to take place soon. Everyone agrees and leaves one by one, and only Elfie is left in the room. Iris was sent after Will by Elfie herself, and she takes out the giant ice core he sent her as she repeats her promise to wait forever for Will. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and watch my other recaps.